Why is Jesus giving these weird indirect answers when important people are asking him to just announce that he's the King of the Jews or the Christ? Why doesn't Jesus just come out and scream from the mountaintops at the very beginning of his time on earth? I am God in the flesh. I'm the Christ, the Messiah. Behold, I have lightning hands and eye lasers. Check it out. It's awesome. I can even fly if I wanted to. Why does he do all that stuff? Everybody would have been super impressed. But instead, he takes this different tack where he's letting other people and reality and the way he fulfills the law and the prophets, the whole story that's out there, he's letting all of that do the heavy lifting in terms of proclaiming him to be the Christ and the Messiah. He doesn't shoot people down or argue when they say that. He never tells them they're wrong, but he's not out screaming it from the mountaintops, at least verbally with his words. And as we were talking about last time around, that becomes pretty evident when you look at these three little uses of "you're the one who said it, you say so" kind of phrases here in Matthew chapters 26 and 27. He fires one of those off at Judas after Judas protests and is like, "What? I'm not, surely it's not going to be me who betrays you." He fires one of those off at the religious leadership when they're like, "Under oath, tell us the truth. Are you the Christ, the Son of God?" And he fires one of those off a chapter later when Pontius Pilate, with a degree of indifference and confusion and irritation that he even has to deal with any of this stuff, says, "Are you the King of the Jews?" And Jesus says the same kind of thing to him. "You've said it is so." So I'm going to have Tina play a little bit of music here, and then we'll keep sorting that all through together. I think all of this confession of Christ language is apparent from the Gentiles in chapter 15. That's 15, right? With the Canaanite woman up north who calls him the son of David. I think this theme of confession comes through as well right after the Sermon on the Mount with the blind men in Capernaum who call him the son of David. And then I think the theme of confession comes through even with the demons who are like, "What do you want with us, Son of God?" It's like Matthew is drawing on the Old Testament and reason and the evidence about Jesus and even the things that people say, whether wittingly or unwittingly, whether from their own observation or from God, whether out of criticism and a desire to destroy or kill Jesus, or out of support and enthusiasm for him. It all adds up to the same thing, that rather than Jesus showing up and being like, "Here is exactly who I am, give me the credit that I am due," there seems to be some element that is maybe also manifest in him telling people early on in his ministry not to go tell other people about what they saw or what happened, but to discreetly just receive this miracle. But it seems to me that Jesus is content to let the law and the prophets and even his enemies and reason and his own actions and his own teachings speak for themselves as to who he is. And then there's a damning culmination to how obvious that theoretically all should be that occurs in chapter 23 with the 7 woes directed at the Pharisees. Those woes culminate with Jesus indicating, like, you've seen everything you need to see. You know who I am. You could get the confession correct, but you don't because you're snakes. You're a brood of vipers. And how are you going to escape from being condemned? And then he goes on to talk about how these religious leaders are acting just like their forefathers who persecuted and killed all of the righteous people who God sent, from Abel to Zechariah. You remember all of that stuff from when we talked about it. And so then when we get to the point of the accusations, which aren't really coming from Pilate in chapter 26, 64 or 63 where we were looking. I mean, Pilate's just repeating the accusations that were thrown out by the religious leadership. They are the real strategic, intentional enemy of Jesus here. The Romans are, I don't know, their interests just aren't the same. They're not concerned about the same stuff that the religious leadership is concerned with, and the Romans aren't concerned with the same stuff that Jesus is concerned with. So in truth, we can fix our gaze on the conversation with the Sanhedrin, with the high priest, and I suppose implicitly the question that Jesus is bouncing back to them when he says, "You said so," or "You say it is so." I mean, what he's really saying is, like, if you guys even know to ask the question, you know the answer to the question. And you, my friend, the attentive reader, you will notice that at no point in the book of Matthew has Jesus come out to this point and been like, "Hey, I am the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God. I am that. See me and fear, tremble. I announce that I am this thing." He hasn't said that. He affirmed rather quietly in a private place that Peter was correct in that. And he certainly has not discouraged anyone from ascribing that to him. And he's not even discouraging the Sanhedrin and the high priest from accusing him of this. Because it's true, both in my own personal belief and in the way the text holds out the reality of the situation. He is the Christ. He is the Messiah. He is the Son of God. And the fact that the high priests even know to charge him with that means that the evidence is so plentiful that they are forced to either bend the knee or destroy him. In that respect, it's kind of like John's baptism. Where did it come from? Was it from heaven or from men? And the religious leaders are smart enough to read the room and know that neither of those answers are going to be very good for them because they're running a completely different equation than Jesus. And again, that equation brings them to only two conclusions. The more Jesus looks like he is in fact the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God, and those two possible options for them are bend the knee or destroy him, and they are clearly not going to pick bend the knee. If you went and listened to that Doja Cat song the other day and now it's stuck in your head, I'm sorry for that. It's kind of like that Bader Meinhof thing where, once you buy a car that you've never thought about before, now you see that car everywhere on the road. It's the old once you're aware of a thing, now the thing is everywhere phenomenon. I fear you may encounter that, and I am super sorry for you, but also it's nice to have other people who are suffering along with me. But the point is, the theme of confession throughout the book of Matthew, not like saying that you're sorry for the bad things you did, but like proactively proclaiming back to God the reality of who he is, proclaiming back to Christ the reality of who he is. That theme manifests in a pretty interesting way, because if you were going to write this book, probably the most natural way to write it would be to have the character you want everyone to believe is the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God, to come along and just scream, I'm the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God. And instead we see Jesus handling it very, very differently, including this super intriguing socially dialed turn of a phrase that puts the reality of the confession back on the person, in the case of Judas, the high priest, and Pilate, back on the person who is accusing him, as though there is somehow something wrong with him being the Son of God, the King of the Jews, the Christ, the Messiah. I think there's a lot of values in those little wrinkles in the text. I think there's a lot of theology and understanding some of the deepest, most important parts of the meaning in those little wrinkles. And I appreciate you being willing to go down those linguistic rabbit holes with me. Thank you to those of you who support the program. That means the world. What an encouragement that is. Thank you to those of you who've taken the time to rate and review the podcast. That gets new people here, and your words are super encouraging as well. Thanks also to Tina for filling in and helping with the last week of podcast. I think she's great, and I think she's done a great job. I enjoy working with her on other projects, and I think it's really cool that she got to stop by here and be a part of our little thing this week. So thanks, Tina. That's it for now. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.